and Sogyal Rinpoche in particular, I think has in the past done a very good job of delineating between shamatha, vipassana, the third state of Mahamudra called single taste or
Yes,
one
one taste.
taste,
Yes,
and
yes,
then
yes.
the fourth stage of Mahamudra is what exactly
Non-meditation.
right, non-meditation,
Yeah,
and and there is a continuum. So we're talking about here is the practice of Mahamudra from the Karmakagyu
yeah,
tradition. We're talking
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
one way, anyway, uh, of systematizing a practice that leads you ultimately to abiding, as you say,
yeah,
resting in the natural state of mind where there is
yeah,
no longer an effort, there's no longer a curriculum, there is no longer um, kind of a practice that you are striving to accomplish, but there is
yeah,
just a complete abiding in a state that is what we would call realization, that your realization has gotten to a level where it's not even about a path anymore. It's
hmm,
just you've
hmm,
encountered the underlying nature of
yeah,
who you are, what we
yeah,
might call Buddha nature or emptiness or Rigpa. Um,
yeah,
and so, or rather, and non meditation to me has
yeah,
also an additional component to it. Yeah, it's not just because
hmm,
so we begin with, for some of you who are like, I have no idea what they're talking about. The practice of shamatha begins by what we did tonight was a shamatha practice,
sure,
calming the mind through breathing
right.
and a sort of attuning to subtler and subtler levels of experience. Now,
Yeah,
we did it very quickly. We did it within, I think that first part was about 15 minutes or so.
uh,
And then comes vipassana, which Sogyal Rinpoche has translated as simplicity, and often it is translated this way in Mahayana.
mm,
Simplicity. Really, it is the sense of insight. So what we're talking here about in the Theravada lens is vipassana. Insight meditation
yeah,
is
yeah,
that second stage. It begins with the fourth stage of mindfulness. So we
uh,
are practicing initially shamatha on body and breath and focusing on feelings and paying attention to thoughts, and these are all part of shamatha.
right.
And the idea is that the more that we are able to maintain concentrative attention in an easeful way, that concentration allows the mind to settle naturally, and that a sense of well-being and awareness arises naturally. It's uncontrived. It is more so a matter of stabilizing the mind, relaxing through breath,
Yeah.
and then what arises from that is this sense of well-being and this sort of mindfulness.
Well,
Because what has happened there is that the five hindrances, or some of the five hindrances, have just arisen,
yeah,
right? Suddenly you're thinking about emails,
right.
you're drifting into a daydream, which can
Yeah,
be pretty cool,
yeah,
right? Nothing
yeah,
wrong
yeah,
with these things. This is
yeah,
this
yeah,
is what the mind does.
yeah.
Um, well, maybe it's a form of non-meditating because,
Uh,
if we'd rather take a nap and we fall asleep, we're not meditating anymore.
that's right.
But it's not the meaning of that fourth stage of Mahamudra. It's a different
No,
kind of
yeah,
non-meditating.
I hope
And it
so.
arises, it arises because of the hindrances, and therefore part of it is in that state, we've kind of lost the clarity of mind, a presence of mind
Hmm.
that is able simply to hold those experiences. It's not that we should not have daydreams or think about emails,
Yeah,
right? It's not about that.
right.
It's that we forget in shamatha, we forget that there is a perceptual field of awareness, what we might call mindfulness, mindful
Hmm,
awareness, that is
hmm.
holding all of these distractions, that is bearing witness to them.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And because we get drawn into the density of those things, we forget the subtlety of simply being in this openness of mind itself. This brightness of mind gets lost because it's very subtle and very refined.
yeah.
And this is why mindfulness, the Pali word sati, is about remembering. It literally means that which is remembered.
Uh-huh.
Um, And so in the Sanskrit and the Pali, or no, that's the Pali term. In Sanskrit, it's taje smrti, right? Or sruti. I always get those two mixed up. Sruti.
It's Smriti.
Taj, smrti, that's right. Thank
Smriti,
you. Tajes are
Smriti.
resident. linguist.
Yeah.
Smrti is the Sanskrit term for mindfulness. SMRTI.
Yeah.
Sruti is that which is written down. Anyway, but that's beside the point. The point here is that you basically, the breath is there as an anchor for when you drift, but it doesn't just have to be the breath. It can be just reminding yourself that you're feeling the source of your posture, the chair, the floor. And this is what makes Buddhist meditation quite distinct from, say, TM or other forms of transcendental meditation, is that you're always aware that you're in a physical body.
Yeah.
This is an anchor for you. So that when you drift, you know that you're drifting. And if you don't know with your awareness, your body knows. Your posture sort of slumps down, your breathing gets off. And so these are all important sort of focal points to remind ourselves, ooh, I'm kind of losing the center. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then vipassana, that second stage, is really about having an experience of insight and seeing, you know what, these thoughts are coming and going, and they're arising and they're dispersing, but there is still a capacity that I feel to simply hold them in awareness. I don't have to do anything with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get to know why we suffer. This is the point of vipassana, is getting to know the patterns of discontent, of agitation, and so on. And we also bring the knowledge of impermanence into the experience, so that we see, oh, wow, this thought's disappearance conveys more of its nature than its arising. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we start seeing, wow, these things really are ephemeral. They just sort of, they're like bubbles. They kind of rise and lift and fly away. And if I look at the pretty lights or I follow the bubbles, then, you know, it's not the kind of non-meditation that I'm hoping to get to one day. And so these are all insights we have, as well as, what is this quality of mind that is so subtle and refined that is bearing witness? When my mind is calm, when it's peaceful, it's not something I'm grabbing from somewhere else, but it's something I'm realizing that is becoming more apparent at the heart of my experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Therefore, one insight is, oh, this is always here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as we move into one taste or single taste, in Mahamudra practice, it's that sense of you're no longer seeing distinct differences between, say, breath and body, noticing thought and a feeling, you know, or focusing one pointedly on breath or on body, but rather you have sort of cultivated this sense of spatial awareness to the point where your one-pointedness of mind goes to no pointedness. And what this means is that you are simply aware of awareness itself. You are aware of this openness of presence, and that becomes what sustains your practice. So now you're not just rooting yourself in the body, but you're actually centering yourself in this all-pointed awareness.
Well, a metaphor
itself.
that I really like in that regard is you start to see that the appearances in awareness are like the waves on the surface of the ocean.
Exactly, right. That's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
The water is water, yeah?
Yeah.
Consciousness is simply consciousness. If you heat it up in a pot and it starts boiling, you can't see through it. It gets steamy and there are bubbles, but it's still water. And this is kind of the mind not on drugs necessarily, but your mind on thoughts as the drug.
Yeah. Or when you identify with the thoughts.
Exactly. And so but it's still of the same nature in a way, citta or consciousness.
Yeah.
Playing out in different forms, and some are dense, some are very kind of dense forms, and others are very subtle and refined.
Yeah.
And studying Buddhism, you know, if you study the texts and you sort of dive in to kind of the structures that the Buddha taught about, such as the five aggregates, karma, things like that, you start seeing how consciousness and its tendencies and its imprints affect our everyday lives.
Yeah.
and as well as discontent and suffering, and seeing it in others too. This is why in Mahayana, the bodhicitta ideal is so important. It's that,
Yeah.
it's not just about me,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
also recognizing that he, next to me on a plane is also impermanent, and this makes him suffer. And so instead of being
Right.
annoyed that he keeps tapping his pen on the tray, I can have some compassion. It's not just about my agitation, but this is too as a suffering being.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of the bodhicitta motivation, is it breaks down the barriers between us. And so then the fourth category of Mahamudra, and each one
Yeah.
has its stages of practice, but the
Yeah.
fourth category of non-meditation that you were asking about, yes, is that kind of effortlessness, as Sogyal Rinpoche says. It is finally just an abiding effortlessly.
Yeah.
Now that can be part of shamatha, it can be part of vipassana, it can be part of one taste. In fact, without the effortlessness, it's hard to really sort of allow yourself to rest in one taste or single taste. But non-meditation is, as you said, it's resting in the nature of mind,
Yeah.
gathering the mind together in an effortless way. And it is also no longer about sitting on the cushion one way or the other. This is not about a practice. It's about sort of now, how do these imprints that I've created impact when I get off the cushion and I'm just living life? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a changed being, even if it's for a little while until I go back on retreat or until I practice again. But it's that sense of not just focusing on seated meditation on the cushion, but it's also about something much, much bigger. It's about what Carl Jung called individuation, perhaps, where you are transformed even as you go into the world, and your perception is different. There has been some change because of that state.